The silence in the pavilion was deafening. The rustle of the Scottish wind through the heather was the only sound as the board members stared at the tabloid headline. Clara felt all the blood drain from her face. She looked at the blurry image of her signature next to the massive financial sum. It looked damning. It looked like a receipt for a bought woman. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice dripping with venom. "Well, Julian, care to explain why your true love comes with a multi-million-dollar price tag and a signed contract?" Clara's heart hammered against her ribs so hard it was painful. She looked at Julian, expecting to see the cold, calculating fury of a man whose empire was crumbling. She braced herself for him to point the finger at her, to save himself and throw her to the wolves. Instead, Julian did something that shocked everyone. He let out a low, dark chuckle. He slipped his phone back into his pocket and walked over to Clara. Without a hint of hesitation, he wrapped his arm securely around her waist, pulling her flush against his side. His touch was firm, steady, and incredibly reassuring. "Evelyn, your lack of romantic imagination is deeply disappointing," Julian said, his voice smooth and dripping with casual arrogance. Arthur Sterling narrowed his sharp eyes, leaning heavily on his cane. "Explain yourself, Julian. That is a legal contract. It details a massive financial transaction tied to your engagement." "Of course it is," Julian countered, looking at Arthur with absolute confidence. "Because when I love someone, I protect them." Clara is a proud woman. She has been working herself to the bone for 2 years, refusing to ask for a single penny of help while her mother suffered. Julian looked down at Clara, his gray eyes softening with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I knew she would never accept a handout from me. She would never take my money out of charity. So, I forced her hand. I drew up a prenuptial agreement that included an immediate medical trust for her mother. I made it a clause in our marriage contract because it was the only way I could ensure the woman I love had the peace of mind she deserved." A collective gasp went through the board members. Clara stared at Julian, her mouth slightly open. It was a brilliant lie. He was spinning a cold, calculated business transaction into the ultimate act of a fiercely protective lover. "The tabloids call it a sham because they only see numbers," Julian continued, turning back to the board, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. "But I call it taking care of my family. If any of you think less of me for using my wealth to save my future mother-in-law's life, then you don't know what it means to be a man." Evelyn opened her mouth to argue, but she found no words. Julian's countermove was flawless. He hadn't denied the contract. He had completely recontextualized it. Arthur Sterling stared at Julian for a long, agonizing moment. Then, slowly, a massive grin spread across the old man's weathered face. He began to chuckle, a rich, booming sound. "Damn it, Julian," Arthur laughed, shaking his head. "You really are a ruthless bastard, but you're a bastard with a heart. Evelyn, drop the tablet. The media will eat this up. A billionaire saving his fiancé's dying mother? It's a PR masterpiece, even if it started as a leak." Arthur walked over and patted Julian on the shoulder. "The merger vote stands for Monday. You've proven to me that you care about legacy and family, Julian. Don't make a fool out of me." "I never do, Arthur," Julian replied smoothly. As Arthur led the board members back toward the castle to manage the press release, Evelyn shot one last, furious glare at Clara before following them. The moment they were alone in the pavilion, the tension broke. Clara felt her knees buckle, and she would have collapsed if Julian's arm wasn't still locked around her waist. "Julian," she breathed, looking up at him, her eyes wide with shock. "How did you do that? You saved us." Julian didn't release her immediately. He looked down at her, the confident smirk fading from his face. The gray depths of his eyes were stormy, reflecting a conflict he couldn't hide. "I didn't do it to save us, Clara," Julian whispered, his voice dangerously low, his face just inches from hers. "I did it to save you. If the merger dies, Vance Global survives. But if that leak ruined your reputation, the Swiss clinic would have pulled your mother's treatment due to the legal scandal. I couldn't let that happen." Clara's breath hitched. You did that for my mother?" "I told you last night, Clara," Julian murmured, his thumb gently brushing against the silk of her dress at her waist. "I protect what is mine, and right now, you are under my protection." He finally stepped back, breaking the intoxicating heat of his touch. He cleared his throat, the cold billionaire mask locking back into place. "Pack your things. Arthur is letting us leave early to handle the London press. The real battle begins when we get back." As Julian walked ahead toward the waiting SUV, Clara stood frozen in the Scottish mist. Her hand rose to her lips, which were still burning from yesterday's kiss. She was supposed to be playing a role, but as she watched Julian's retreating figure, a terrifying realization washed over her. She was no longer pretending to be in love with him.